Most people imagine financial struggle as something obvious, something dramatic and visible. Yet one of the most powerful financial traps in modern society looks completely normal from the outside. It looks like a stable salary, a decent apartment, reliable transportation, weekend shopping trips, monthly subscriptions, financed furniture, annual vacations, and the quiet belief that everything is finally under control. The strange part is that many people only begin to feel financially trapped after their income rises, because higher earnings often create a new psychological baseline that silently expands faster than their actual freedom. A person who once felt grateful for a small raise slowly becomes emotionally dependent on maintaining an increasingly expensive version of normal life. And over time, the entire structure begins operating less like wealth building and more like maintenance. The middle class lifestyle trap is not usually created by irresponsibility. In many cases, it emerges from rational decisions repeated consistently inside a system designed around consumption stability. The modern economy depends heavily on predictable spending behavior, which means financial products, housing systems, advertising structures, and even social expectations continuously encourage people to convert future income into present comfort. The result is that many individuals gradually build lives where nearly every dollar already has a destination before it even arrives. Income increases, but flexibility does not. Salaries grow, but optionality shrinks. What makes this trap psychologically powerful is that lifestyle inflation rarely feels dangerous while it is happening. Human beings adapt extremely quickly to improved conditions. A slightly nicer apartment soon stops feeling luxurious and begins feeling standard. A newer car quickly becomes emotionally invisible. Restaurant spending that once felt occasional slowly becomes routine. Subscription services accumulate quietly because each individual payment feels small enough to ignore. The brain recalibrates its expectations continuously, and after enough adaptation, reducing expenses starts to feel emotionally similar to losing status, comfort, or identity. This is where financial psychology becomes more important than raw mathematics. Most people assume financial progress is mainly determined by income level, but behavior often matters more than earnings after basic needs are covered. Two individuals with identical salaries can experience completely different long-term outcomes depending on how quickly their lifestyles expand alongside their income. One person may use raises to purchase larger recurring obligations, while another may increase savings rates and preserve flexibility. From the outside, their lives can appear nearly identical for many years, yet beneath the surface, they are moving toward completely different futures. The mathematics behind the middle class trap becomes clearer when recurring expenses are viewed as permanent claims on future labor. Imagine someone earning $80,000 annually who upgrades apartments, finances a car, increases dining habits, adds multiple subscriptions, and gradually expands discretionary spending until monthly obligations consume most of their paycheck. Even if these decisions appear manageable individually, the combined effect creates a system where employment income must continuously flow at the same level simply to preserve stability. The person is not necessarily building assets at the same speed that they are building liabilities. This creates a subtle but important distinction between income and wealth. Income is a flow. Wealth is stored flexibility. A high-income household can still remain financially fragile if its cost structure rises proportionally with earnings. In contrast, moderate earners who maintain controlled lifestyles often accumulate resilience more effectively because a larger percentage of their income becomes retained capital rather than ongoing consumption. Over long periods, small differences in retained capital begin compounding into major differences in freedom. Historically, versions of this pattern have appeared repeatedly during periods of economic expansion. In the post-World War II consumer boom, Rising wages and expanding credit access helped create modern middle class consumption culture. Homeownership, automobiles, appliances, and suburban lifestyles became tied not only to comfort, but also to identity and social success. Credit systems evolved alongside these expectations, allowing households to pull future purchasing power into the present. While this expanded economic growth, it also normalized debt supported lifestyles across multiple generations. The psychological effect of comparison intensified the process even further. Human beings evaluate success relatively, not absolutely. A person rarely measures their lifestyle against historical standards of survival. Instead, they compare themselves against peers, coworkers, neighbors, or online representations of success. This means satisfaction often becomes temporary because reference points constantly shift upward. Social media accelerated this tendency dramatically by exposing people to endless curated lifestyles that appear financially effortless from the outside while hiding the debt, stress, or instability underneath. One of the most important economic realities behind the middle class trap is that many recurring expenses scale faster than emotional satisfaction. The first improvements in quality of life usually create meaningful increases in comfort and security, but beyond a certain threshold, the psychological returns begin shrinking while the financial obligations continue expanding. A larger home increases maintenance costs, property taxes, furnishing expenses, and insurance. A luxury vehicle may provide temporary excitement, but also creates ongoing depreciation and financing costs. Over time, individuals can become surrounded by expensive conveniences that deliver surprisingly little lasting fulfillment relative to their long term financial cost. At the same time, modern labor systems often reward specialization and stability rather than flexibility. Many workers spend years increasing their income inside narrow professional tracks, while simultaneously increasing fixed expenses outside of work. This combination creates dependency on maintaining consistent high earnings. The higher the lifestyle structure rises, the harder it becomes to tolerate career risk, entrepreneurial experimentation, relocation flexibility, or temporary income disruption. In this way, lifestyle inflation can quietly reduce personal autonomy even while income rises. The trap becomes especially visible during economic downturns. In expansion periods, rising asset prices and stable employment can mask fragile household structures. But recessions expose how many lifestyles depend on uninterrupted income flow. Layoffs, inflation spikes, rising interest rates, or declining industry suddenly force households to confront obligations that once seemed manageable. Financial stress increases not only because income falls, but because the cost structure built during optimistic periods remains fixed. Behavioral economics helps explain why escaping the cycle feels psychologically difficult. Humans are strongly loss averse, meaning reductions in lifestyle often feel more painful than equivalent gains feel pleasurable. Once a person adapts to a certain standard of living, voluntarily scaling back can trigger emotional resistance even when the adjustment would improve long-term stability. This is why many individuals continue expanding consumption even after recognizing the underlying problem intellectually. There is also an identity component embedded deeply inside spending behavior. Purchases are rarely just functional. They often communicate belonging, competence, achievement, or progress. Entire industries are built around transforming emotional aspirations into consumer decisions. A person may not buy an expensive object purely for utility. They may buy it because it represents adulthood, professionalism, success, or social legitimacy. The middle class trap becomes powerful because consumption slowly merges with self perception. The mathematical consequence of this system appears most clearly through opportunity cost. Money directed toward continuously expanding lifestyle maintenance is money that cannot simultaneously purchase ownership, investment capacity, or future optionality. Small recurring differences compound dramatically over decades. Even modest increases in savings rates invested consistently over long periods can produce disproportionately large outcomes due to compounding growth. Meanwhile, recurring consumption generally resets back to zero after the experience ends. This does not mean comfort or enjoyment are inherently harmful. The issue is not spending itself, but unconscious escalation. Financial stability tends to improve when individuals deliberately separate genuine fulfillment from automatic consumption expansion. Some of the wealthiest long term investors in history maintain surprisingly controlled lifestyles relative to their income, not because deprivation creates wealth, but because retained flexibility creates resilience. Wealth often grows quietly while consumption seeks visibility. At a systemic level, the middle class lifestyle trap reflects a broader tension within consumer economies. Economic growth benefits from spending, borrowing, upgrading, and continuous consumption cycles, while individual financial resilience often benefits from delayed gratification, retained capital, and controlled recurring obligations. The incentives of the system and the incentives of personal long term stability do not always align perfectly. Over time, this realization creates a psychological shift. Financial freedom begins looking less like acquiring endless upgrades and more like reducing dependency. A person with lower fixed obligations can often tolerate uncertainty more effectively, make career decisions more independently, and absorb economic shocks with less panic. Flexibility itself becomes a form of wealth because it expands available choices. The people who eventually escape the middle class lifestyle trap are not always the highest earners. Often they are individuals who become conscious of the invisible relationship between lifestyle growth and freedom reduction. They recognize that every recurring obligation quietly claims future time, future labor, and future attention. Instead of viewing raises purely as permission to consume more, they begin treating part of increased income as a tool for expanding resilience and optionality. In the end, the middle class lifestyle trap is less about numbers and more about adaptation. Human beings normalize almost every condition they live inside long enough, including financial pressure disguised as success. The danger is not that people desire comfort or security. The danger is that many slowly construct expensive lives they no longer fully question, while believing rising income automatically means rising freedom. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it simply builds a larger machine that requires constant maintenance to keep running.